Hi, and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we'll be continuing to create our low-res game asset by reprojecting our textures in Metashape and cleaning up the textures in Photoshop. So I've got Maya still open here, and as you can see we've still got our low-res sword that we've modelled and UV'd. We don't need our UV anymore. So what we want to do is just go to our prop sword group, and remember at the start we made this position ref, so we can unhide this, and this was our position ref for our working position, and then our position that comes out of Metashape. And the reason why we kept this is because we need this position to take it back into Metashape to reproject the textures. So I'm going to grab my prop sword. I'm just going to middle mouse click and drop it under position ref. Now when I go back to my first frame, that's now brought the sword into the position that it was exported into. So now I'm going to press Shift and P and export that out, well, remove that from the group. And now that's taken all the translations, rotations and scale from this position. So I'm going to just hide that. So now all I need to do is just export this out. So I'm going to go File, Export Selection. I've already got an exports folder here, so I'm just going to call this Prop Sword for Meta Shape. So I know that's the prop sword for Metashape that I'm going to use, and we only need to use this for that. So I'm going to export that out. So now that's exported, I'm now going to go to Metashape. So I've already got this open, and you can see I've still got the sword open from the previous tutorials. You can see we need to switch out this geometry. So all I'm going to do is go File, Import Model, and I'm going to go to my Exports folder, and I'm going to pick up the OBJ for the prop sword for Metashape. Select Open, and it's going to say Replace Default Model, and I say Yes. And now you can see that we've got our model in the correct place. So what we can do, we can go to our tools, go to our mesh, and we can just have a look at our mesh UVs and see if they're all correct, and they all look good. So now all we need to do is just go to Workflow and Build Texture. And we don't need to change anything else here. We can go to Images, well, we can just leave everything as it is, because it should always be, if it's not on, it might be on generic, but make sure that you're on Keep UV. And I'm going to keep mine at 8000, because we can reduce this. If the tile's too big, we can always make it smaller, and it shouldn't affect much of the detail. But if we make it small, then we need it bigger. Then that's when we sort of lose detail. So I'm just going to select OK, and this shouldn't take too long, but I might fast forward through it. Cool. So that's reprojected all the textures back on. And if we look at this, we can see we've actually got a pretty good result. All our projections look pretty good. We've obviously got some bits missing here, which we can probably just Photoshop out a bit. But generally, it's looking pretty good. We've obviously got some stuff here from where it's sort of reprojecting over the low-res mesh. But I'm quite happy with that. That's, like I said, we're only doing a really low-res one. We don't want all this detail, so it's going to look a bit, because it's projecting onto something that's flat, so it might look a bit weird. But everything else looks a bit, let's not worry too much about that. We can always paint that afterwards, but we can fix this easily. So that's actually worked really well, I think, for just the low-res game asset. Cool, so all we need to do now is export this out. So I'm just going to go File, Export, and Export Texture. and just going to go new text textures, and I'm going to do it as TIFF because then I keep a lot of the color data as well. Oh, make sure we name it. I'll just call it props or diff VO1 for diffuse. Then I'm just going to export out my diffuse map. And that's that. So we can now go back to Maya and have a look at it. So what we can do is, let's do this a little bit different, because we can just put a texture on all of this, but maybe we don't want the same one. So let's add a new material. Let's just put an Arnold shader on it. It's got AI standard surface. Oh, let's delete there's got some history on that, so let's edit, delete history. And we'll just call this blade. Just call this AI blade text. And we can give this one a new material, Arnold standard, and we'll do the same. We'll just call it AI. We'll call it, just in case you've got other stuff in the same, sword brackets text. And we'll do the same for the bolts. Just so we can sort of change these separately, we're not having it under one texture basically. So we still need to fix the text, it's just so we can quickly see. And new material. I don't think that's a hill, that's called something else. I think this is actually called the hilt. We could just call it cap. Cool, so let's just select our blade, go to AI, let's call it sword blade. And we can just go to color, go to file, and it does this thing sometimes where it kind of does a weird thing. I don't know why it does that. Oh no, I mean, wait, sorry. Go color, select file, so now it should change color. So I'm just going to go to my export folder, textures. I'm just going to bring in the basic diffuse. And what we'll do, we'll just leave this as the sRGB color space. And you can see now that's brought in the sort of the texture we need to still fix. And you can see it's looking pretty good. So let's do the same for the brackets. And the bolts. And we just do it for all of these. just so we can see what's going on. So this is not a texturing tutorial, we're just going to place it on there just so we can see it. Let's get some... I must have forgot to change it as I saved it. Oh, not sure what's going on there. Cool. So we've now got our sword, and all the textures look pretty good. So let's just I'll bring these into Photoshop and just tidy this up. So I've just opened up Photoshop. So I'm just going to go File, Open, and I'm just going to let's come over here, navigate to my texture. And it's just this one here, so we'll click Open. And you can see that we've got our texture here now. So we can see where our problems are. And the way we've now, because we've re-UV'd it, so we can easily work just by photoshopping it here. So first one, I'm just going to duplicate this. Turn that off. And you can do this multiple ways. You can either, let's try and find a section where you can either use the marquee tool. Just gonna select a chunk, edit and copy it. I'm just gonna paste it. Now I can move this across, and this will give us a sort of a very rough sort of. We sort of patched it up, but we've got these edges here. So what we can do, we can just go to our eraser tool, bring down the opacity, and just use the eraser tool around the edges. Like I said, this is not a full-on texturing tutorial. This is just to sort of clean up this rough mesh so you don't see the sort of seams. I think we just did too much. And as simple as that is, I've just copied a section and just put it over the top. And you can also, so I'm actually going to do that for this bit as well, because it's just the easiest way to do it, I think. So I'm just going to select that, edit, copy. Oh, make sure you're on the background copy. Copy, paste. No, this is just a sort of quick fix. It's not. So maybe we'll actually do a larger area because I think that was a bit small. Let's pick a section like that. Edit, copy. Make sure you're on the right one. Copy and paste. I'm just going to move that over the top. Then actually the same again with the eraser tool. Just going to erase all those noticeable seams. And it will slowly disappear and you won't be able to see it. So we can also do the same for the middle section. So we don't have to pick it from the same part, we can pick something from up here. So select that, you edit, copy, edit, paste. And this is just a very quick sort of patching up and cleaning textures. So let's put that above that layer. Just align that. Then we'll just do the same again with the eraser tool. And we'll just erase it so we can't see it. Like there's tons of ways you can do this, and better ways. So like, if you really wanted to do this like a really like amazing job on this, you'd probably retexture this, but because we're just doing it as a quick asset, and this is fine for what it needs to be, we can just sort of copy and paste patches in our Photoshop, because you might not have Mari or Substance, and this might be your only option. Like you could do this in Paint if you really wanted to as well. So I'm going to select this layer. I'm just going to go to my clone stamp. Just going to bring the size down. And I'm just going to select a patch around here. I'm just going to paint this tip. Just so it's something fairly similar. Just to get rid of, because I had a black patch right on the tip. So now we've got rid of that. We don't really see any of these sort of textures, so we can probably just leave those for now if you wanted to. You can paint over them. Let's actually do all this bit down the center actually, because I think it's probably not projected onto it, and obviously these are gaps. So let's actually do that. So let's just select our marquee tool. I'm just going to pick a large chunk. In fact, no, I will. Let's do it. Let's just select a larger area. Edit, copy, edit, paste. This is like the simplest sort of way to sort of just fix some really rough textures. This is by far not a text. I just want to make sure that you know this is not a texturing tutorial. We're just fixing some rough sort of misprojections. And we don't want to cover that up because it's got some quite nice darkness there, so let's just go up to the edges. Good. Just overlap it actually, because then we can use the eraser tool to sort of bring that back. Then we got a nice blend. And just remember, don't do it too much. You might go too far over. But now we can just. Ooh, this is probably too hard, so let's bring up the softness. Bring down the softness, sorry, and because we've brought that right to the edge actually, so let's leave that. We'll use a clone stamp on that bit. We'll just use the eraser on this bit. Try not to do it too much. Like it's going to be underneath, so you're not going to see it anyway. And you know, that actually goes off the UV, so it probably doesn't matter so much. So what we can do is select that and go to our clone stamp. And I'm just gonna, like we could have done this before, but let's just clone stamp from the background copy, then go back to this layer. Let's put our opacity a bit up so it's not so. Just try and avoid duplicate parts. And let's just do the same for this bit here as well. We can bring down, yeah, opacity on it, just to remove that seam. We're not really going to see it anyway, so cool. So yeah, I'm probably done with that. I'm not going to spend loads of time on this. It's just a very, very quick sort of fixing some rough textures and stuff. So I know this is quite a destructive workflow, but I'm just going to merge those layers. Just going to call it blade fix. Now I'm just going to do this on now all I'm just going to do is just use my clone stamp, because we don't really see that area anyway. Just bring my opacity back up. And I'm just going to paint these black patches out, just so it's not seen. I'm not too bothered that if it doesn't match perfectly. You can spend more time if you want on this. In fact, let's not worry, I don't think you see that. Cool. So the one thing that we do want to fix is this bit. I'm just using my clone stamp, not doing anything special. Alright, so you spend more time making this nicer, but I'm just going to very roughly do it. And let's not worry about that. And you know, I think we're pretty much, for a very quick sort of fix, I think we're pretty much done. So let's save this. Let's just call this VO2. Just remove the layers. Let's click save. We'll just leave the image compression on so it's not a massive file. So now we'll just go back to Maya and just have a look at it. And I got Maya open, so I'm going to select this sword. Go to my attributes editor, go to sword blade texture, go to my color. And I can just swap this out for 2 if I want. I can just go 2 because it's in the same file and it should reload. So now we've fixed it. As you can see, we now don't see any of it, and that black patch on the end is now gone. And one of the other things we did change was this. So we'll also switch that one out for 2. And see how now that black patch is not there. Cool. So we've fixed our textures. We've not done anything more to this. Yeah, we're pretty much done. If you want to start like play with the textures a little bit more, you're more than welcome to try and get them a little bit better. But as for this, I'm just going to keep it as it is. Cool, so we're done with reprojecting and fixing our diffuse texture. So maybe in the next one we will go through and just make some different maps for it maybe. But let's see how it goes. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.